Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming together to immerse ourselves in this rich body of wisdom we call Torah. We're going to read through the English translation of this week's Torah portion, which is actually a double portion called Vayakhel-Pekudei. It's in the book of Exodus. It starts with chapter 35, verse 1, and it's actually run through to the end of the book of Exodus. And then after we've read that, I'll share with you
What are they doing?
study about it,
Doing with
and
this?
then we'll have our collective conversation about it. If you'd like to join me in reciting a blessing that we have the opportunity to say before we read from Torah, feel free to join me. In Hebrew, it's Baruch
Ruach atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asot divrei Torah. Amen.
Maybe translate this. Thank you, God, for this opportunity to immerse ourselves in words and deeds and relationships of Torah. So let me share with you the opening verses of our Torah portion, and I'll invite others to have an opportunity to read as well. Moses then convoked the whole Israelite community and said to them, "These are the things that God has commanded you to do. On 6 days work may be done, but on the seventh day you shall have a Sabbath of complete rest, holy to God. Whoever does any work on it shall be put to death. You shall kindle no fire throughout your settlements on the Sabbath day." Moses said further to the whole community of Israelites, "This is what God has commanded. Take from among you gifts to God. Everyone whose heart so moves them shall bring them. Gifts for God, gold, silver, and copper, blue, purple, and crimson yarns, fine linen and goat's hair, tan ram skins, falcon skins, and acacia wood, oil for lighting, spices for the anointing oil and for the aromatic incense, lapis lazuli and other stones for setting for the ephod and the breastpiece. And let all among you who are skilled come and make all that God has commanded. The tabernacle, its tent and its covering, its clasps and its planks, its bars, its posts and its sockets, the ark and its poles, the cover and the curtain for the screen, the table and its poles and all its utensils and the bread of display, the lampstand for lighting, its furnishings and its lamps and the oil for lighting, the altar of incense and its poles, the anointing oil and the aromatic incense, and the entrance screen for the entrance of the tabernacle, the altar of burnt offering, its copper grating, its poles, and all its furnishings, the laver and its stand, the hangings of the enclosure, its posts and its sockets, and the screen for the gate of the court, the pegs for the tabernacle, the pegs for the enclosure and their cords, the service vestments for officiating in the sanctuary, the sacred vestments of Aaron the priest, and the vestments of his sons for priestly service. Mark Thompson, would you like to read? We're at verse 20.
I would. Thank you, Rabbi. The entire community of the Israelites then left Moses' presence. Everyone whose heart uplifted him came forward, and everyone of generous spirit brought a contribution for God, for the labor of the tent of meeting, and for all its service, and for the sacred garments. The men accompanied the women. All those who were generous of heart brought bracelets, nose rings, finger rings, and chastity belts, as well as gold objects of all kinds, along with all those men who donated a wave offering of gold to God. Whoever had turquoise, purple, or scarlet wool, or linen, or goat hair, or red-dyed ram skins, or tahash skins, brought them. Whoever set aside a contribution of silver or copper brought it as a contribution for God, and whoever had acacia wood for any of the work brought it. Every wise-hearted woman spun by hand, and they then brought the spun yarn of turquoise, purple, and scarlet wool and linen. All the women whose hearts inspired them with skill spun the goat hair. The princes brought the onyx stones and inset stones for the ephod and the breastplate, as well as the spice and the oil for the luminary, for the anointing oil, and for the incense offering. Every man and woman among the Israelites whose heart compelled them to bring something for all the work that God had commanded to be done through Moses brought a donation for God. Moses said to the Israelites, "Look, God has singled out by name Bezalel, son of Uri, son of Hur, of the tribe of Judah. He has endowed, excuse me, he has endowed him with a divine spirit, with wisdom, insight, divine inspiration, the talent for all types of craftsmanship, enabling him to devise woven designs and to work in gold, silver, and copper, and the art of gem setting and wood carving, and all kinds of other skilled crafts. He has also given him an Oliav, son of Achisamelech of the tribe of Dan, the ability to teach. He has endowed them with wise-heartedness to work in all the crafts of the carver, the weaver, and the embroiderer, with turquoise, purple, and scarlet wool and linen, in the crafts of every kind of artisan and skilled weaver."
Thank you so much. And then Linda and Justin, we're now at the very start of chapter 36, if you'd like to read a little bit.
Thank you. Oh, we're at the start of 36 there. Okay.
Hmm.
Go ahead.
Bezalel and Oholiab and every wise-hearted man into whom God had imbued wisdom and insight to know how to do, shall do all the work of the service of the holy, according to all that the Lord has commanded. And Moses called Bezalel and Oholiab and every wise-hearted man into whose heart the Lord had given wisdom, everyone whose heart lifted him up to approach the work to do it. So they took from before Moses all the offerings that the children of Israel had brought for the work of the service of the holy, and they brought him more gifts every morning. Then all the wise men who were doing the work of the holy came, each one from his work, which they'd been doing. And they spoke to Moses, saying, "The people are bringing very much, more than is enough for the labor of the articles which the Lord had commanded to do." So Moses commanded, and they announced in the camp, saying, "Let no man or woman do any more work for the offering for the holy." So the people stopped bringing, and the work was sufficient for them, for all the work, to do it and to leave over.
Then all the wise-hearted people of the performers of the work made the Mishkan out of 10 curtains, consisting of twisted fine linen and blue, purple, and crimson wool. A cherubim design, the work of a master weaver, he made them. The length of one curtain was 28 cubits, and the width of one curtain was 4 cubits, the same measure for all the curtains. He joined 5 of these curtains together to one another, and the other 5 curtains he also joined to one another. He made loops of blue wool on the edge of one curtain, that is, at the edge of the first set, and he did the same on the edge of the outermost curtain of the second set. He made 50 loops on the edge of one curtain, and he made 50 loops on the edge of the curtain in the second set. The loops corresponded to one another. And he made 50 golden clasps, and he fastened the curtains to one another with the clasps, so the Mishkan became one.
Beautiful. Thank you both so much. Mark 11, seeing we're now at verse 14 of chapter 36, if you'd like to read.
Thank you, Rabbi. They made clothes of goat's hair for a tent over, cloths of goat hair for a tent over the tabernacle. They made the cloths 11 in number. The length of each cloth was 30 cubits, and the width of each cloth was 4 cubits. 11 cloths having the same measurements. They joined 5 of the cloths by themselves, and the other 6 cloths by themselves. They made 50 loops on the edge of the outermost cloth of one set, and they made 50 loops on the edge of the end cloth of the other set. They made 50 copper clasps to couple the tent together so that it might become one whole, and they made a covering of tanned ram skins for the tent, and a covering of dolphin skins for above. They made the planks for the tabernacle of acacia wood, upright. The length of each plank was 10 cubits, the width of each plank, a cubit and a half. Each plank had 2 tenons parallel to each other. They did the same with all the planks of the tabernacle. Of the planks of the tabernacle, they made 20 planks for the south side, making 40 silver sockets under the 20 planks, 2 sockets under one plank, for its 2 tenons, and 2 sockets under each following plank for its 2 tenons. And for the other side wall of the tabernacle, the north side, 20 planks, with their 40 silver sockets, 2 sockets under one plank, and 2 sockets under each following plank. And for the rear of the tabernacle to the west, they made 6 planks. And they made 2 planks for the corners of the tabernacle at the rear. They matched at the bottom, but terminated as one at the top into one ring. They did so with both of them at the 2 corners. Thus there were 8 planks with their sockets of silver, 16 sockets, 2 under each plank.
Thank you so much, Mark. Carla, I don't know if you're prepared to read, if you have a text that you'd like to read from. And if you want to share with us, and then indicate you need to unmute.
Yeah, no, I'm ready to go here.
Oh, wait,
Sorry about that. No, I don't have anything at hand right now. I didn't know how
Great.
this all works.
Okay, Carla, thank you so much. We're so glad that you're here. Let me invite Jim, if you'd like to go ahead and read a little bit. We're now at verse 31.
They made bars of acacia wood, 5 for the planks of the one side of the tabernacle, 5 bars for the planks of the other side wall of the tabernacle, and 5 bars for the planks of the wall of the tabernacle at the rear to the west. They made the center bar to run halfway up the planks from end to end. They overlaid the planks with gold and made their rings of gold as holders for the bars, and they overlaid the bars with gold. They made the curtain of blue, purple, and crimson yarns and fine twisted linen, working it into a design of cherubim. They made for it 4 posts of acacia wood and overlaid them with gold, with their hooks of gold, and they cast them 4 silver sockets. They made the screen for the entrance of the tent of blue, purple, and crimson yarns and fine twisted linen, done in embroidery, and 5 posts for it with their hooks. They overlaid their tops and their bands with gold, but the 5 sockets were of copper.
Thanks so much, Jim. I'll invite David and Susan. We're now starting chapter 37, if you'd like to read a little bit.
Thank you.
And they made a screen for the entrance of the tent, indigo and purple and crimson and twisted linen, embroiderer's work, and its 5 posts and its hooks. And they overlaid their tops and their bands with gold and their 5 sockets with bronze. And Bezalel made the ark of acacia wood, 2.5 cubits its length, and 1.5 cubits its width, and 1.5 cubits its height. And he overlaid it with pure gold, inside and outside, and he made for it a golden molding all around. And he cast for it 4 golden rings on its 4 feet, and 2 rings on its one side, and 2 rings on its other side. And he made poles of acacia wood, and overlaid them with gold. And he brought the poles through the rings on the side of the ark to carry the ark. And he made a cover of pure gold, 2.5 cubits its length, and 1.5 cubits its width. And he made 2 cherubim of gold. Hammered work he made them at the 2 edges of the cover, 1 cherub at one edge, and 1 cherub at the other edge. From the cover he made the cherubim at both its edges. And the cherubim spread their wings above, shielding the cover with their wings, and their faces toward each other, toward the cover their faces were.
And he made the table of acacia wood, its length 2 cubits, and its width 1 cubit, and a height 1.5 cubits. And he plated it with pure gold. and made a border of gold all around for it, and made a rim of a handbreadth for it all around, and made a border of gold for its rim all around. And he cast 4 rings of gold for it, and he put the rings of the 4 corners that its 4 legs had. He put the rings on the 4 corners that its 4 legs had. The rings were in juxtaposition to the rim, housings for the poles in order to carry the table. And he made the poles of acacia wood and bladed them with gold in order to carry the table. And he made the items that were on the table, its dishes and its pans and its bowls and its jars with which libations would be poured, of pure gold. And he made the menorah of pure gold. He made the menorah of hammered work, its shaft and its branch, its cups, its ornaments, and its flowers, all were part of it, and 6 branches coming out of it from its sides. 3 of the menorah's branches from one side, and 3 of the menorah's branches from the second side. 3 almond-shaped cups in one branch with ornament and flower, and 3 almond-shaped cups in the other branch with ornament and flower. So it was for the 6 branches that came out from the menorah, and 4 almond-shaped cups within the menorah with its ornaments and its flowers, and an ornament under the 2 branches from it, and an ornament under the 2 branches from it, and an ornament under the 2 branches from it, for the 6 branches that came out from it. Their ornaments and their branches were part of it, all of it, one hammered work of pure gold. And he made its lamps, 7, and its tongs, and its fire holders of pure gold. He made it and all of its equipment out of a talent of pure gold.
Thanks so much. Robert, we're at verse 25, so why don't you start there and then take us into the first several verses of chapter 38 as well.
Thank you. And he made the incense altar of shittim wood. The length of it was a cubit, and the breadth of it a cubit. It was 4 square, and 2 cubits was the height of it. The horns thereof were of the same. And he overlaid it with pure gold, both the top of it and the sides thereof, round about. And the horns of it also he made unto it a crown of gold round about. And he made 2 rings of gold for it under the crown thereof, by 2 corners of it, upon the 2 sides thereof, to be places for the staves, to bear it withal. And he made the staves of shittim wood, and laid them with gold. And he made the holy anointing oil, and the pure incense of sweet spices, according to the work of the apothecary. And he made the altar of burnt offering of shittim wood. 5 cubits was the length thereof, and 5 cubits the breadth thereof. It was 4 square, and 3 cubits the height thereof. And he made the horns thereof on the 4 corners of it. The horns thereof were of the same, and he overlaid it with brass. And he made all the vessels of the altar, the pots, and the shovels, and the basins, and the flesh hooks, and the fire pans, all the vessels thereof made he of brass. And he made for the altar a brazen grate of network, under the compass thereof, beneath unto the midst of it. And he cast 4 rings for the 4 ends of the grate of brass, to be places for the staves. And he made the staves of shittim wood, and overlaid them with brass. And he put the staves into the rings on the sides of the altar, to bear it withal. He made the altar hollow with boards.
Thank you, Robert, so much. Rose, we're now at verse 8, chapter 38, if you'd like to read.
Yes, thank you, Rabbi. He made the laver of copper. I think some of the translations say brass and some say copper. Copper, and his stand of copper from the mirrors of the women who performed tasks at the entrance of the tent of meeting. He made the enclosure on the south side, 100 cubits of hangings of fine twisted linen for the enclosure, with their 20 posts and their 20 sockets of copper, the hooks and the bands of the posts being silver. On the north side, 100 cubits with their 20 posts and their 20 sockets of copper, the hooks and the bands of the posts being silver. On the west side, 50 cubits of hangings with their 10 posts and their 10 sockets, the hooks and the bands of the posts being silver. And on the front side to the east, 50 cubits, 15 cubits of hangings on the one flank with their 3 posts and their 3 sockets, and 15 cubits of hangings on the other flank, on each side of the gate of the enclosure, with their 3 posts and their 3 sockets. All the hangings around the enclosure were of fine twisted linen. The sockets for the posts were of copper, the hooks and bands of the posts were of silver, and the overlay of their tops was of silver. All the posts of the enclosure were banded with silver. The screen of the gates of the enclosure, done in embroidery, was of blue, purple, and crimson yarns and fine twisted linen. It was 20 cubits long. In height or width was 5 cubits, like that of the hangings of the enclosure. The posts were 4. Their 4 sockets were of copper, their hooks of silver, and the overlay of their tops was of silver, as were also their bands. All the pegs of the tabernacle and of the enclosure round about were of copper.
Thank you so much. And now, Norm, now we're at verse 21 of chapter 38. And Norma, we're not hearing you. Okay, let me skip to Carl and we'll come back here. Carl, we're at verse 21 of chapter 38.
Sure. Thank you, Rabbi. These are the records of the tabernacle of the pact, which were drawn up at Moses' bidding, the work of the Levites under the direction of Ithamar, son of Aaron, the priest. Now Bezalel, son of Uri, son of Hur, of the tribe of Judah, had made all that God had commanded Moses. And at his side was Oholiab, son of Ahishmach, of the tribe of Dan, carver and designer, and embroider in blue, purple, and crimson yarns, and in fine linen. All the gold that was used for the work and all the work of the sanctuary of the elevation offered of gold came to 29 talents, 730 shekels by the sanctuary weight. The silver of those of the community who were recorded came to 100 talents and 1,775 shekels by the sanctuary weight. A half shekel a head, half a shekel by the statuary weight for each one who had entered in the records from the age of 20 years up to 603,550 men. The 100 talents of silver were for casting the sockets of the sanctuary and the sockets for the curtain. 100 sockets to the 100 talents, a talent a socket. And of the 1,775 shekels, he made hooks for the posts, overlay for their tops, and bands around them. The copper from the elevation offering came to 70 talents and 2,400 shekels. Of it he made the sockets for the entrance to the tent of meeting, the copper altar and its copper grating, and all the utensils of the altar. The sockets of the enclosure round about, and the sockets of the gate of the enclosure, and all the pegs of the tabernacle, and all the pegs of the enclosure round about.
Norma, we got you here? Okay, now we're at the very start, chapter 39.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
Thank you.
The copper from the elevation offering came to 70 talents and 2,400 shekels.
We're at the very start, chapter 39.
Oh, sorry. Of the purple, blue, and crimson yarns, they also made the service vestments for offering, officiating in the sanctuary. They made Aaron's sacred vestments as God has commanded Moses. The ephod was made of gold, blue, purple, and crimson yarns and fine twisted linen. They hammered out sheets of gold and cut threads to be worked into the designs among the blue, purple, and crimson yarns and the fine linen. They made for it for attaching shoulder pieces. They were attached at its two ends. The decorated band that was upon it that was made like it for one piece with it, of gold, blue, and purple, and crimson yarns and fine twisted linen, as God had commanded Moses. They bordered the lazuli stones with frames of gold engraved with seals and engravings of the names of the sons of Israel. They were set on the shoulder of the pieces of the ephod as stones of remembrance for the Israelites, as God had commanded Moses. The breastplates was made in the style of the ephod, of gold, blue, purple, and crimson yarns and fine twisted linen. It was square. They made the breastpiece of doubled, a span in length and span in width doubled. They set it in different rows of stones. The first row was a row of carnelian, chrysolite, and emerald. The second row of turquoise, sapphire, and amethyst. The third row of jacinth, agate, and crystal. The fourth row of beryl, lapis lazuli, and jasper. They encircled it, their mountings with frames of gold. The stones corresponded in number to the names of the sons of Israel, 12, corresponding to their names, engraved with seals, each with its name for the 12 tribes.
So much. Richard, would you like to read? We're now at verse 15. Thank you, Owen. On the breastplates, they show more braided chains of corded wood and filigree. They made 2 frames of gold and 2 rings of gold, and fastened the 2 rings at the 2 ends of the breastpiece, attaching the 2 golden cords to the 2 rings at the ends of the breastpiece. Then they fastened the 2 ends of the cords to the 2 frames, attaching them to the shoulder pieces of the ephod at the front. They made 2 rings of gold and attached them to the 2 ends of the breastpiece at the inner edge, which faced the ephod. They made 2 other rings of gold and fastened them to the front of the ephod, low on the attached them to the 2 ends of the breastpiece, which faced the ephod. They made 2 other rings of gold and fastened them on the front of the ephod, low on the 2 shoulder pieces, close to its seam above the decorated band. The breastpiece was held in place by a cord of blue from the rings to the rings of the ephod, so that the breastpiece rested on the decorated band and did not come loose from the ephod, as the Lord had commanded. Thank you, Ricky. Kennebard, we're at verse 22, if you'd like to read it a little bit. All right, let me read a little bit. We're now at verse 22. The robe for the ephod was made of woven work of pure blue. The opening of the robe in the middle of it was like the opening of a coat of mail, with a binding around the opening so that it would not tear. On the hem of the robe, they made pomegranates of blue, purple, and crimson yarns twisted. They also made bells of pure gold and attached the bells between the pomegranates all around the hem of the robe between the pomegranates. A bell, a pomegranate, a bell, and a pomegranate, all around the hem of the robe for officiating in, as God had commanded Moses. They made the tunics of fine linen of woven work for Aaron and his sons, and the headdress of fine linen, and the decorated turbans of fine linen, and the linen breeches of fine twisted linen, and sashes of fine twisted linen, blue, purple, and crimson yarns, done in embroidery, as God had commanded Moses. They made the frontlet for the holy diadem of pure gold, and incised upon it the seal inscription, Holy to Adonai. They attached to it a cord of blue to fix it upon the headdress above, as God had commanded Moses. Thus was completed all the work of the tabernacle of the tent of meeting. The Israelites did so just as God had commanded Moses, so they did. Then they brought the tabernacle to Moses with the tent and all its furnishings, its clasps, its planks, its bars, its posts, and its sockets, the cover, ram skins, the covering of dolphin skins, and the curtain for the screen, the ark of the pact and its poles and the cover, the table and all its utensils, and the bread of display, the pure lampstand, its lamps in due order, and all its fittings, and the oil for light, the altar of gold, the oil for anointing, the aromatic incense, and the screen for the entrance of the tent, the copper oil, the altar with its copper grating, its poles and all its utensils, and the laver and its stand, the hangings of the enclosure, its posts and its sockets, the screen for the gate of the enclosure, its cords and its pegs, all the furnishings of the service of the tabernacle, the tent of meeting, the service vestments for officiating in the sanctuary, the sacred vestments of Aaron the priest, and the vestments of the son for priestly service. Just as God had commanded Moses, so the Israelites had done all the work. And when Moses saw that they had performed all the tasks, as God had commanded, so they had done, Moses blessed.
Okay, I have it. Should I continue?
Read at the beginning of chapter 40.
40? Okay, thank you. And Adonai spoke to Moses, saying, on the first day of the first month, you shall set up the tabernacle of the tent of meeting. Place there the ark of the pact and screen off the ark with the curtain. Bring in the table and lay out its due setting. Bring in the lampstand and light its lamps. And place the gold altar of incense before the ark of the pact. Then put up the screen for the entrance of the Mishkan. You shall place the altar of burnt offering before the entrance of the Mishkan of the tent of meeting, Ohel Moed. Place the laver between the Ohel Moed and the altar, and put water in it. Set up the enclosure round about, and put in place the screen for the gate of the enclosure. You shall take the anointing oil and anoint the Mishkan and all that is in it to consecrate it and all its furnishings, so that it shall be holy. Then anoint the altar of burnt offering and all its utensils to consecrate the altar, so that the altar shall be most holy. And anoint the laver and its stand to consecrate it. You shall bring Aharon and his sons forward to the entrance of the Ohel Moed and wash them with the water. Put the sacred vestments on Aharon and anoint him and consecrate him, that he may serve me as priest. Then bring his sons forward, put tunics on them, and anoint them as you have anointed their father, that they may serve me as priests. This, their anointing, shall serve them for everlasting priesthood throughout the ages. This Moses did just as Adonai had commanded him, so he did.
So much. Mark Thompson worked verse 17, if you'd like to read.
Okay, verse 17. Thank you. It was in the first month of the second year, on the first of the month, that the tabernacle was erected. Moses erected the tabernacle. He set up its bases, fitted its planks, inserted its crossbars, and erected its pillars. He spread the tent of goat hair over the tapestry covering of the tabernacle, and placed the ram skin and the tachash skin roof of the tent over it, as God had commanded Moses. He took the tablets of the testimony and placed them in the ark. He positioned the poles on the ark and placed the cover on top of the ark. He brought the ark into the tabernacle and placed the partition curtain so that it would screen the ark of testimony as God had commanded Moses. He placed the table in the tent of meeting on the northern side of the tabernacle outside the curtain. He then set up an arrangement of showbread on it before God as God had commanded Moses. He placed the candelabrum in the tent of meeting opposite the table on the southern side of the tabernacle. He then lit the lamps before God as God had commanded Moses. He placed the golden altar in the tent of meeting in front of the curtain. He then burned an incense offering on it as God had commanded Moses. He put the screen for the entrance to the tabernacle in place. He then placed the sacrificial altar in front of the entrance to the tabernacle, the tent of meeting, and upon it he sacrificed the daily ascent offering and its accompanying grain offering and libation as God had commanded Moses. He placed the laver between the tent of meeting and the altar and put water in it for washing. From it, Moses and Aaron and his sons washed their hands and feet. They would wash whenever they entered the tent of meeting or drew near to the altar as God had commanded Moses. He set up the courtyards surrounding the tabernacle and the altar, and he emplaced the screen for the entrance to the courtyard. With this, Moses completed the work. The cloud covered the tent of meeting, and the glory of God filled the tabernacle. Moses could not enter the tent of meeting since the cloud had rested on it, and God's glory filled the tabernacle. And whenever the cloud rose from above the tabernacle, the Israelites would embark on all their journeys. If the cloud did not rise, they would not set out until the day it rose. For wherever they camped, wherever they camped, the cloud of God was above the tabernacle by day, and fire would be there by night, visible to the entire house of Israel at all the stations of their journeys.
Thank you so much, everyone. And this concludes not only our Torah portion for the week, it also concludes the book of Exodus. We have a little prayer of celebration that we recite when we conclude a book of Torah in Hebrew. If you'd like to join me, the recitation is Hazak
Be strong, be strong. May we be strengthened.
Thank you. So, since this is a double portion, I'd like to extend our time together by about 10 minutes or so, but I understand if people need to depart before then. But let me share with you what I experienced reading this portion, and then we'll open it up for our collective conversation. So a good portion of what we've been reading has been about the construction and then the erection of this sanctuary space called the Mishkan. And what I'd like to focus on is who is it that's being called upon to actually build it? And in our portion, we read, in our study sheet, I have it on number 1, let all among you who are skilled come and make all that God has commanded. And the Hebrew that's translated as skilled is Hacham Lev, which literally means wise-hearted. So that word Hacham comes from Chochmah, which means wisdom. And the notion about wisdom, the word Chochmah, has a profound resonance within Jewish text and literature. So we read in the book of Proverbs, for example, that one whose heart is wise, Hacham Lev, same combination of words, receives commands. That is, if you are filled with this wisdom in your heart, then you will hear what it is that the divine is guiding us to do in order to live a holy, full life. The word Hacham, or Chochmah, appears also later, or a little in a chapter earlier in the book of Proverbs, where we read this: wisdom, Chochmah, has built her house. She has hewn her 7 pillars. She has prepared her feast, mixed the wine, and also set the table. So the book of Proverbs is setting us up not only for wisdom being a source of opening us up to receiving kind of divine guidance, it's now also describing wisdom as, if you will, the energy, the source, the instrumentality that builds a house. And that house is not just one that has structures to it, 7 pillars. It is also sensuous. It's rich in luxuriant experiences, feasting and wine, and there's a table where people gather. Well, the word Chachma within Jewish mysticism takes on a very interesting pathway. And in the central Jewish mystical text, the Zohar describes the word Chokhmah as being built out of 2 Hebrew words. One is Toach, which means ability or potential, and the other is Ma, which means what is. And so in the Zohar, it then says wisdom is really the potential of what is, the potential of what is to be. And so in that sense, it's saying Chokhmah is something that is virtually non-being. Why virtually non-being? Because in the Kabbalistic construct, as in Jewish mysticism, we have this notion, kind of a beautiful sacred mythology, if you will, that the divine emanates into this dimension and is in a sense refracted into 10 different characteristics or traits. And the first one of those is wisdom. And wisdom in that sense is seen as the first bit of divine power that enters into the human realm, and it is kind of very unstable. If you think about it as like a flash of inspiration, that's kind of what it's getting at. And it precedes any kind of real understanding of what that flash was, any kind of analysis of what that flash was, any kind of classification of what it was. It's just boom, like lightning, there it is. And then it requires another quality or characteristic that we carry with us to be able to then sit with it, to begin to dissect it and analyze it, understand it, and make some use of it. So that's the notion of what Chokhmah is within that Jewish mystical system. And we have this beautiful quote from the book of Job, which is often translated this way: from where does wisdom come? But in the mystical reading, it reads the Hebrew quite literally. It reads it as wisdom comes from nothingness, which is literally what the Hebrew says. It says, Chokhmah me'ayin timatzeh, wisdom from nothing emerges. So that is this beautiful notion that this flash of insight, this unstable spark comes from that which is beyond this realm, comes from the great abyss, the no thing that is the universe. So I want to play with that notion about wisdom a little bit, and then also play with this notion about this structure that's being built. I mean, what we read tonight is very tactile. It's very materialistic. You know, we've got all these skins and textures and weavings and gold and copper and gemstones of all kinds of, they're very solid materials. And so what we're going to look at is our tendency to focus on the materiality of that tends to obscure perhaps what this narrative is pointing us towards, that we get stuck in this material level. So I want to look at French philosopher Gaston Bachelard, who started out as a hard science person, chemistry and physics and so forth. And then eventually he switches to the philosophy of science, meaning I want to understand where knowledge comes from, how we develop our knowledge, and consequently how we use that knowledge in scientific application and how it evolves. And then a little bit later in his career, he then begins to focus on this whole notion about language and about the notion of what it is, the transition of the relationship between the material and the immaterial, in a sense. And he wrote a book called The Poetics of Space, in which he explores what does it mean to have a material structure. And he looks at a material structure and says, material structure, a dwelling place, is more than the geometry and the arrangements of services. He says, that's not really what a home is about. A home is really about the dynamics of relationships that occur in and through time. And he wrote that an inhabited space transcends geometrical space. So here's what he wrote, what I feel is a very beautiful sentence about the notion of a house on a home. If I were asked to name the chief benefit of a house, I should say, the house shelters daydreaming. The house protects the dreamer. The house allows one to dream in peace. So for Bachelard, what makes a house significant is not merely that it's protecting us from the external environment. What's profound for him about a house is its capacity to be an incubator of life in its most profound sense. And what makes life most profound is its capacity to constantly evolve in understanding what is possible. So the artist I'm sharing with you this evening is a Finnish artist, Emilia Nurmivara, and she is very much influenced by Gaston Bachelard. And she had a solo exhibition at a gallery in Copenhagen, and the exhibition itself was called The Poetics of Space, which shows you her degree of honoring of Bachelard. And on the front of the study sheet, I have this painting called Room to Dream. And when we look at it carefully, we can see that there are certainly identifiable objects in the room. There's lamps, there's the tabletop, there are chairs, there are windows, there are things on the walls, there are vases and glasses and so forth. But if we look carefully, we see that they don't all have what we might call a rational relationship to one another. There's a goblet that seems to be floating in space. There's another that seems to be protruding from the side of a table. And there seems to be a more than one dimension that's happening here. And she's achieved this effect by having us look through this scene through kind of this glass that kind of distorts our perception of what's there. And that, in a sense, I think is designed to help her promote this notion that when one enters a room that is one's home, there's more than what we can touch that's there. There are memories there. There are experiences there. There are objects that you remember that were once there, that are no longer there. And perhaps you're sitting there and you're dreaming of what could be there. And so she has tried to superimpose all these different dimensionalities into this onto this canvas. And here's what she says about her work. It's in number 7. Through my paintings, I examine the value of physical objects in a home and the significance they have for our soul space and dreamscape. The childhood home gives us the first experience of a home and is the place where we first dream and bring our imagination to life. To breathe life to the portrayed interiors, I use elements of reflections from glass surfaces that turn the paintings into a visual play. I want to create an illusion of a room and try solving the problem between figurative and abstract imagery in a physical space. The image is built as a collaboration between reality and fantasy. I find it visually interesting how the different reflections distort the reality and give the paintings a dreamlike imagery. So I want to take what our artist, Emilia Novara, our philosopher and scientist, Gaston Bachelard, what they are now offering up to us as the notion of what the space is really all about. And then look back upon what we just read. What is this space really all about? Is it merely what people can touch? Is it merely what exists in the moment? Or is it, as our artist suggests, a space within which one is experiencing lots of different things and lots of different time references? Is it a space, as our philosopher and scientist, Gaston Bachelard, is suggesting, where what's most important is that it incubates the imagination. It allows us to think otherwise, more than what currently exists, to make contact with something that one cannot even perhaps touch and see. When I was putting all this material together on Tuesday, I thought I had the theme locked down. If I ever think that way, I know that I'm in trouble. But that's what I thought at the moment. And what I thought at the moment was, this notion that we've encountered here about the role of wisdom. And if we take that through what Kabbalah and the Zohar are telling us, that wisdom is not about the practicality of building something. Wisdom is the capacity to be ignited with an insight one did not have before. And it comes from someplace beyond what we're used to and familiar. It comes from beyond. And so if that's what's happening, then maybe what our portion is telling us is that wisdom is needed to construct some kind of structure where we can facilitate contact between that which is beyond the material, that which is beyond what we're familiar with, and make contact with something that is, as Kabbalah says, it is the primary source of life from God. It is that infusion. And so the project that we just read about is to create something that will allow us to be able to maintain that connection with the source of all life, to be able to allow it to continue to enter into our lives. Then I thought this afternoon, just as I was getting ready, what I saw was how the book of Exodus ends, takes us back to the beginning. How does it do that? Because what we encountered in the beginning of the book of Exodus was that the Israelites were building something. They were building pyramids. And here, what's happening at the end of the book of Exodus, they are now building something. They are building a Mishkan. Oh, well, that's a very nifty way to kind of tie the narrative of this book we call Exodus together. As slaves, they built these objects called pyramids. At the end, they are now building something that will connect them to the source of all life. And then I thought this. I thought the characters, the two main characters, certainly at the very beginning of the book of Exodus, we have an protagonist and an antagonist. The antagonist is Pharaoh. The protagonist is Moses. And I realized both of those names are Egyptian names. They're not Hebrew names. So Pharaoh is an Egyptian name, and it means great house. And when it gets transliterated into Hebrew, it gets transliterated with the same sounding letters, para, okay, Pharaoh, but the Hebrew verb para means to let go. And I thought, well, that's kind of curious, but isn't that ironic that the name that as it appears in our Hebrew text, if one wanted to understand the Hebrew of it, it means to let go. And it's being given to a character who refuses to let go. Well, that's kind of interesting. Right. And then the protagonist in this is Moses. And Moses is also, that's not a Hebrew name, despite what you try to make of it. It is an Egyptian name, Moses, which means son of, like in Ramses, son of Ra. And when we transliterate it into Hebrew, we use the letters that allow us to kind of vocalize the same sound as Moses, the Egyptian, and it becomes Moses. And the Hebrew letters that are used to make up that name are from the Hebrew masha, which means to draw. So that's why you might hear, oh, his name is Moses because he was drawn out of the water. But it's not a Hebrew name, it's an Egyptian. And then I thought this. So we have these two Egyptian characters who are at antagonist relationship to one another. One of them, Pharaoh, gets left behind. The other Egyptian aspect, the aspect that we call Moses, is carried through our story all the way through to the end of the book of Deuteronomy and experiences a kind of transformation. So there's an Egyptian aspect that gets discarded and left behind, and an Egyptian aspect that gets carried with us, but gets transformed. I want to suggest that's what we're reading about in a way in our portion here. There's an aspect of Egypt that we get carried with us, this construction project. But it is now a transformed construction project. Why? Because it's no longer being built by slave labor, it's being constructed by wisdom labor. And wisdom labor is the labor that's designed to connect us with the source of all life, which is creative, procreative, imaginative, incapable of being touched, incapable of being seen, but capable of being experienced. So this is, well, I experienced this notion about what we are being called upon to do is to continually construct these wisdom houses, both in the world around us and this house too. This body, this self is a house. And we have the capacity to construct it to be designed more by that of wisdom and liberation than by that of power and enslavement. And that for each one of us is a constant struggle. And the guidance is being provided for us in this great body of work. So with that, I'd like to know what you experienced, what you thought about, what you wondered about as we read through our portion. Yeah, got Mark Levenstein, and then we've got Rose and David and Susan. So go ahead, Mark Levenstein.
So you're you keep making me think, Rabbi. Thank you. One thought I had, just framing things in a slightly different perspective. In Egypt, we were building something for someone else in a very specific way for a very specific purpose. In the desert, we're building something for ourselves, also with a very specific purpose. But a part of that purpose is building community in the service of God. And a more serious thing, a more serious question. If Ramses was the son of Ra, who's Mo?
Thank you. I'm glad that was a more serious one. But the notion about, yes, that in Egypt, we are constrained in our self-development. We are constrained because we are being forced to do something for someone else. And now that we're out in the wilderness, now that we are free from that constraint, part of the big project, as you're pointing out, is how does one create community? And it turns out to be not so easy. Lord, using that today, every day. It's not hard. It's hard to create community because we still have our self-interest, but we have something more than our self-interest at stake. But you're absolutely right. There's and it seems to be the project of building this Mishkan, which involves the whole community, and everyone gives freely the materials. And we read in our portion tonight, they gave so much that Moses said, "Well, I got enough." Stop giving. So when one invites the heart to give what the heart wants to give a lot. Let me call upon Rose and then David and Susan. Yeah, go ahead, Rose.
Yeah, thanks for that, Mark. Yeah, I think that there's a sense of joy here because people can contribute, but they're also able to use their skills and be recognized for them. But when you started talking about wisdom, Rabbi, I thought of the Hagia Sophia in Istanbul, which was Constantinople, as we know from the song, but was built by Justinian in the 6th century, and the name means holy wisdom, and it was initially built as an Eastern Orthodox church, and then the Muslims came in and conquered Constantinople and made it into a mosque. And then Ataturk, I think, he just made it into a museum because he was not into religion. And then it became a mosque again. But the name struck me because I think it's the only church that has a name like that. It means holy wisdom, and it certainly reflects, it's beautiful if you've ever been there, but it reflects what you were talking about. And I'll let it go at that because the hour is late.
Oh, thank you, Russ, for bringing that in. That's, I've only seen pictures of it. It's supposed to be amazing. So let me call upon David and Susan. Yeah.
So the heart of wisdom, Lev, Chokmah. We've talked about how the word wisdom, explored how the word Chokmah has some different depths to it than it does in English. I'd like to hear more about
Lev and how that's different from just being the seat of feeling.
Do you have a sense of that you're asking that question?
You know, this is a psychiatry trick that you use, but no, I don't, and that's why I ask. Lev, I know doesn't mean, it means the seat, not just the seat of feeling, but of also to some degree an intellect. It's sort of a concept that a human being is not just thought and feeling. A human being, the singularity of a human being is a combination of rationality, irrationality, feeling, and other stuff. And the word Lev probably refers to that rather than what heart means in English. But I am really uncertain about it, and that's why I bring it up.
So, my sense is that the ancients didn't have the same understanding of neurology and those organs and what they offered up that we do today. And my sense is that when talking about the heart, one is talking about the location of oneself. And that the location of oneself is also who one is and who one and therefore is also a source of like knowledge and wisdom in that sense, rather than the processing of data, which is what we usually think of when we think about thoughts and that kind of approach. So now we have this bifurcation about, at least in our imagery, of heart being a site of emotions, and the brain being the site of rational thought. I don't think the ancients had that kind of bifurcation. So that's about the extent of my understanding. But maybe Robert will jump in here. You'll share your wisdom.
Well, you know how little wisdom I have. But the imagery that came to my mind is that reflection is like a quiet pond, wisdom like a deep well. Regrettably, most of the conversation we hear is like a shallow pool, a shallow bit of water, a couple inches deep. I say this because, and I think, Mark and I have talked about this. I think there is such a thirst for conversation that is from the deep well. We have, well, once a month, we have some neighbors and friends come into our home. They're primarily Catholic, evangelical. Of course, you all know my wife and I are Baha'is. But, none of that matters to us. We're people. That's the important thing. And one or two of them have mentioned that it's the only place they can come and really have deep discussion. And what does that say about our society? So maybe part of wisdom is those of us who are on the screen. I'm really talking about you all, not me, because I have very limited capacity. But trying to interject in our lives, listening and then providing some wisdom. And that's one of the joys of Thursday night. We have an opportunity to have really meaningful and elevated conversation, and even be able to hear the word wisdom and understand that if we don't have it, we're not fully alive. Because that deep well is where the soul thrives. That's where it's happy. That's where the poet lives. That's where the artist lives. And most especially, that's where love lives.
Wonderful. Thank you, Robert. And it takes us back to our guest here, Gaston Bachelard, who, although he starts out as a scientist, where he ends up is as an advocate for poetry, because this poetry is the language that allows us to really access and express imagination, and allows us to disrupt our attachment to that which is only rational and only material and only mechanical. And so thank you for bringing that up. And now I'll call upon Richard, and then I'll call upon Mark Thompson. Go ahead, Richard. Thank you. Notice Bezalel, son of Uri, son of Hur. You're there. Your DNA is part of the family. And this is the home that's being built for the Jew. And the prior generation, plural, are still very much there in the home. That's what's making it. And ironically, and I was, after I read this week, I went and looked at everything in this. And really was my brother, was my mother, was my father, was my schoolmates. So it's all living right there still. And then, just as we're talking, I got my other poem out here, my phone, because I got a picture. My son sent me a picture, and here he is on the beach in San Francisco watching the sunset. And that's very much alive and a part of my home. Bless. God bless. Thank you. Okay. And then Mark Thompson. Yeah.
Well, Rabbi, you know that that passage that you quoted inspired me, and I was wondering if you thought it might be appropriate I share the poem that it provided to me. Is that all right?
Lord.
Okay. So I titled this, and by the way, I have to thank my dear friend Robert for inspiring me to have a little trial at poetry. So Robert, thank you. Without your inspiration, I don't think I would have tried it. But I call this The First God I Saw. The first image of God I remember did not come from a synagogue. It was on the label of a windbreaker jacket my mother brought me for school. A large square face, almost like SpongeBob SquarePants, only serious, colorless, with a wrinkled brow and cheeks puffed out as if he were blowing with all his strength. I did not know what the picture meant, but that winter, the wind came hard down our street at night. It leaned against the house and found the narrow places in the door where the weather stripping did not quite meet. From there, it made a sound I could not explain, a long moan, rising and falling like a low breath in the throat of the house. I would lie in bed, watching the thin strip of hallway light beneath my door, and tremble as the light flickered with every breath. Somewhere outside, I thought, that square-faced God was leaning close to the house, blowing, not angry, not kind either, just serious, as though the wind were something he had to keep moving all night long. And if he stopped, even for a moment, the air itself might fall still, and the whole dark world would notice. Thank you for letting me share that.
Thank you.
Beautiful. Both my brain, my heart, self, unbifurcated self, really takes in what you've shared. And what struck me is that you start off with this notion about God as something quite material, this label on a jacket. And by the end of the poem, we're dealing with breath, and we're dealing with that the effect of that breath might be noticed only once it stopped breathing. And so talk about wisdom coming from nothingness. And you've taken us that full journey from something very material, the absence to its absence. And that's when we become aware, when it's absent. And so in your poem, you've taken us on this journey that I think Torah is taking us on as well, certainly within the book of Exodus, of going on a journey from a culture or a state of our own development, where all we can worship and construct is that which is very material, which is very touchable, tangible, and consequently impressive, to this point where we're now constructing something where we will make contact with life, not in an object, but in a space between objects. That space between the cherubim and where there's emptiness is where we encounter the source of our life. And so in your poem, your poem itself is a house of wisdom. And I want to thank you for constructing it for us and sharing it with us.
Thank you.
Each and every one of you. If it weren't for our time together, I would not see as much as I do. God bless you all. I look forward to our next gathering. Bye.
Thank you. Much love.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, much love.
Good night, Rabbi.